Hello, this is Debbie and this is Light Up Your Worth. Welcome back. So excited to have you here. And I'm excited to share that this month, over the next 5 episodes, we're going to be celebrating International Women's Day. As a fellow female, I am so excited to be able to highlight some of the incredible achievements of the women that I'm featuring over the next 5 episodes. Because March 8th is more than just a day. I think it's a moment where we can pause and just thank each other, thank our ancestors, thank those women who are there before us, so that we have this opportunity, that I have this opportunity to bring this podcast to you. Without them, this would have never happened. And so today's episode with Shalini is about her story is about being able to change cultural differences with women in her culture, come to the United States, and the impact that she has made here on future generations through her daughters and her community service. And so I'm very pleased to introduce you to her. So stay tuned and be prepared to love her as much as I do. So thank you for being here. I'm always so blessed. Thanks. Hello, this is Debbie and this is Light Up Your Worth. I'm excited for you to be here this week. You are going to love my guest. Shalini is a seasoned technology professional with 20 years of leadership experience, is passionate about teaching in the community as a certified trauma-informed yoga and meditation instructor, currently pursuing her health coach and Reiki energy healing certifications. She has coached over 100 individuals in yoga, career development, and holistic wellness while fundraising thousands plus for local nonprofits. She's also a panelist speaker in Title I public schools through a nonprofit which inspires young girls to pursue STEM fields. She has a vision to empower individuals to tap into their inner compass and deepen their mind-body connection. Her podcast has a vision to empower individuals with knowledge of holistic wellness and self-care by weaving together a rich tapestry of experiences from practitioners around the world. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for having me. I'm super excited.
I am super excited because I started my career being born and raised in the Bay Area, California, in tech. And then it grew into this huge industry right there in my backyard. It was nice being raised in that professional environment when there was women starting to join into that. And so I am super fascinated to learn more about how you went from being an immigrant into working and then now pursuing others to follow into the sciences and tech.
Wow, I have a lot to share. You're taking me down the memory lane, right? So I landed here when I was 19 years old. And just to rewind a little bit, just from a cultural context, right? So I'm an Asian, born in India, raised obviously in an Indian upbringing culturally. And there's a lot of conservatism. So it's my parents, of course, when I the first said, oh my gosh, I want to go to the United States to study, that was like just raising these alarms. It was like, oh my gosh, you're too young. I have 2 brothers, so I'm the middle child. For them, it was like, really, that's too far away. We don't even know anyone. How are you going to do all of this? And for me, I just felt I had read a lot of things. I had a cousin, I had a few friends who had come to the United States, and I'd heard from all of them just the opportunity from an education perspective, just being independent as a woman, you just had a lot more opportunity. And for me, I felt like I wanted that freedom. You know how the typical teenage brain works, right? I wanted the freedom. I wanted to explore myself. Like I wanted to really figure out what I wanted to do. And I needed that time. So I had to convince my parents. And one thing my dad said was, okay, if your older brother gets his visa, because he was coming here for his master's, and he said, if he gets his visa and he's able to go, then you can actually go attend your visa interview. And you will not believe it, Debbie. I was praying, keeping my fingers crossed. Oh my God, he needs this visa so I can go in for my interview. And the universe just conspired to make this happen.
Yes.
And it did happen. I obviously went to the interview, I got my visa, and I said, okay, you promised me, so I have to go. A big supporter through all of this was my mother, because she, again, that generation, she had her bachelor's degree in English literature, which those days in India, most women would not even get a chance to go to college. So she actually did that, and she was really good in just writing poems. Unfortunately, she never had a chance to work. She was home raising the three kids, and my grandparents used to be there, so her in-laws. And we had a huge joint family. The home was always busy. There were always people, there were social engagements. And my dad was busy with work, had to travel to work, but that was the priority, right? That's really how that generation worked.
Yeah.
So the one
Yeah.
thing I would say was she really wanted me to go. She said, I don't want you to be in that place where I was not able to experience that career. I was not able to be that independent financially on my own. And she really helped and supported me and basically told my father that I should get this opportunity.
Thank
That's
goodness for
really
your mom, right? What a role model that she had her own English degree to have that knowledge, to have experienced a tad more
yep.
than the generation before. So good for her.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, mom. That's why it's inspirational for my own girls. I have two girls. And when they hear this and then they see me here trying to juggle everything because I'm so passionate, I'm so curious about so many things that I want to learn. And it's about finding time. 24 hours just is not enough. But sorry. So coming back to that immigrant story. So that was really, I would say, what inspired and got this whole journey started. And I came here when I was 19 and just finished my undergraduate degree. Then I did my master's degree. In between was the arranged marriage, which again is one of those traditional cultural things, right? I would say it wasn't that bad as it sounds, because a lot of people have this misconception that an arranged marriage means you don't even see the person on the other side.
Mhm.
That wasn't the case. I got to talk to a few different boys after my parents scanned down their profile and their family. And then they would send it down and say, all right, now here's your pile and you tell us, right? So that's really how that process worked. And so all of that happened in between. After I got my master's, actually, while I was studying, the whole arranged marriage happened. And then right after that, got married and moved to Seattle. And I've been here 21 years. This is home for me, the longest I've ever lived in one place.
Mhm.
And this is how my journey in tech and my whole career started.
Wow, what a journey. And I really like that you are highlighting how it was different for you for an arranged marriage. A lot of us are trying to understand some of the cultural differences, right?
Correct.
But it's almost an insult, or who do you ask? Because you won't know
Yeah.
who actually went through that process. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's really eye-opening versus what is perceived in the
Mhm.
media with the
Yep.
movies. And it really
Exactly.
opened your eyes that though it was in this process that you had some choice in it.
Yep. I forgot I had a choice, but I think I pushed through. I found that resilience and I found I had to just pursue things and figure out what this meant and stand up on my own.
Hmm. How did you get interested in learning more about the industry in the tech world, especially if we go back 20 years, was really male dominated, because that's when I was in tech and it was heavily
Yep.
influenced by males. And how did that spark your interest to go into that field?
This is a great question because it goes back to upbringing with Asian Indian parents. You had an engineering choice or a medicine path or tech. That was where practically the money was and the opportunity was. So for me, it was now when I look back, I just don't know if I truly knew that's what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
but it was almost the message. Yes, you have to go into tech because it's what you would do. It was almost just elimination. I wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue medicine, a long journey of 10 years. It's too expensive, honestly, right? Coming all
Mm-hmm.
the way as an immigrant and whether you can afford all of that over 10 years. So that wasn't a choice. I think that put me at business and tech. So I
Mm-hmm.
did my master's in management information systems. It was a combination of the business aspect of things, but also touched on some of the CS concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got into this field. I remember coming into my first job after marriage, and those were also the times as an immigrant. I was in a visa, right? And that was the whole visa sponsorship. That's a whole
Mm-hmm.
different journey in itself, right? Maybe that's a whole different topic. But I still remember my first job. I just started with a startup company, and there was really just 5 people in the company. It was super small, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I was doing everything. I was handling customer service calls. I was selling their product. I was demoing their product. So it put me in a place where I said, wow, this is fascinating. That's how the journey started. And fast forward when I came to Microsoft, a little over 15 years now. But the first interview was a panel of 5 men. That in itself was intimidating, I have to say. And more to that was I was also pregnant, 7 months. And I remember walking in thinking, oh, this may not work. I was terrified. I didn't even know if I wanted to apply for the job because I read the description and I said, oh, they're asking for a bunch of other things I don't even think I've done. And my husband was like, no, just give it a shot. You never know. I said, fine. And I just applied. So I didn't even know I'll get an interview. So that was the first step. Then I walk into the interview, pregnant, heart pounding fast. The interview was great. I got the job. They saw I was pregnant. It didn't matter. Since then, it's been an amazing journey. Definitely to your initial question on male-dominated tech world.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I have seen that through
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of meetings and a lot of social gatherings, right? It would be pretty male dominated. And I also had to juggle the fact that I couldn't go to a lot of those social events because I was a mom of 2 young kids. Most men would hang out, talk about work, and I would miss out on a lot of those conversations. I would miss
Mm-hmm.
out on that social connection, right? And it was tough. But I think the good thing for me was I always had bosses or managers who understood that juggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was important because I've heard from a lot of my friends who did not have that experience. And that was tough because you're in a male dominated space. If your manager can't even relate to you as a woman, a parent, a mom, trying to do it all, that becomes super stressful. Everything compounds.
Yes, it does. What a difference that makes. I want to go back to how your husband encouraged you
Yes.
because there's all these statistics about as women, we look through a job description and we want to know we can do 100%
Yep.
versus a male will look at it and go, I can do about 50%. I'm good to go.
Yep.
And then they are more likely to get it because they have that confidence where, like, oh, they're going to ask about those two things I've never done.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And that's where I feel like the girls today, it's that imposter syndrome, right?
Hmm.
It's real. I experienced that 20 years ago. I still see girls experiencing that. I still have to coach my
Hmm.
girls, tell them to get out there. I remember in middle school, I was telling them go to robotics classes, explore. They would say, "Oh my gosh, mom, there's no girl." I said, "That's all right. If that's what you like, then that's what you like." My older one used to love Legos and building things even when she was younger. She
Hmm.
would fix furniture in the house just like that. It came naturally. Like nobody, taught her how to do it, but she would just look at a manual and she was quick. I was like, wow, you really like building these things, don't you? That's how the whole robotics journey started. It was tough, but I kept persevering
Hmm.
because I knew what this felt like. I did not want this to repeat. Having this from my mom, I wanted my girls to be better at a younger age, not wait
Hmm.
until my age to realize, wow, can I even do this? Or do I have the confidence?
Hmm.
So for me, definitely the imposter syndrome was real.
I love that your mom's instilled in you a feeling of worth, that you had the value to go forward. and now you are now bringing it forward. It actually shows how our, the stuff that I work with is the conscious and the unconscious beliefs. And by your mom instilling that in you, you
Mhm.
have less of those beliefs in the back of your mind to come, which is such a disadvantage to women as a whole, that we're carrying all that generational trauma in our DNA and things that we may not have ever experienced,
Mhm.
but it's still so close to us
Oh, yes.
and
Yes, absolutely.
influences everything we do.
Yes, of course. I feel like I was, again, very lucky and blessed to have my mother
Mhm.
tell me that and push me out of that comfort zone and actually help me get here. But I still know a lot of girls who are still in that very conservative mindset, and where women still feel back home, just culturally, that it's okay for girls to just get married, just raise kids, stay at home. You don't really have to do all these X, Y, and Z things, which, yeah, I was very lucky. I had that choice.
I really love that. And I love that you are going out in your community to encourage girls to pursue the STEM fields. And I really want to hear more about that. How did you get started with that? What are you doing to change that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really wish I had more than 24 hours, Debbie, to be honest,
Me
because I
too.
have a lot of things that I want to do and I'm passionate about. But I would say specifically this journey started because I came across one of these nonprofits again as my girls were just going through this journey in middle school and high school. And there's a nonprofit called Ignite, and they just reached out and they said, "Hey, would you be interested in being a panelist speaker and coming out to some of these Title I schools?" And we have one in Seattle here. And just for knowledge, Title I school basically means about 70% of the kids in the school are on reduced meal plans or lunch plans, which
Mhm.
means they're at that poverty phase, right? Wherein the parents either are not educated, they haven't gone to college, or they are just below that income level and they can't afford the opportunities that most other kids would. And
Mhm.
so for me, that was really something I've always been very passionate about, giving back. And I'll talk a bit about what my girls have also done in the community. But I think for me, really, my journey started there. So I said, I would love to do that. And I went to this public school in Seattle, and there was a panelist of us. I think it was about four of us. We all came from different companies, from different just domain spaces. And we talked about what our journey was. And I shared my experience because there were a lot of girls there who were also immigrants, right? And so I think my journey
Mhm.
actually resonated with quite a few girls in that space when we had this conversation. And I talked about, how it was important to stand up for yourself, figure it out. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not worth it. Don't let anybody just tell you can't do something. And it was so important for those girls to actually even hear that,
Mhm.
right? And I still remember after that conversation, a couple of them came to me and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know whether I even like robotics. I don't know how to even start with computer science. I haven't done anything. I don't even know if I'm interested." So there was all kinds of questions, right? And it was just first awesome to see curiosity. They actually wanted to do something with their life, because
Mhm.
I wish I never had any of these opportunities, to be honest, when I was in middle or high school. But I feel these girls at least get to hear from people who have come from
Mhm.
different backgrounds. And so that's what I told them. I said, "You have so much opportunity. So it is a question of how you leverage and utilize those opportunities, right? And connect with mentors, talk to people, and understand what they've done, what their journey meant, and also go to these high school clubs, because there are opportunities in their school." I said, "You have opportunities in your school. You have a robotics club, you have a STEM club. Did you try those out? Did you even go attend any of those?" Because sometimes
Mhm.
I feel like we see all these opportunities, but we don't even explore what's right there in front of our eyes,
Mhm.
right? We just miss that. And so it's very interesting to me, just reinstating a lot of those things where we feel it's common sense, but not really. Sometimes we miss that. And probably a lot of kids just don't see it.
I would agree with that. Growing up in the Bay Area in more of a working class, and we did have a lot of people on free lunch. I don't actually know if we were considered a Title One,
Okay.
but we did have some clubs too that I ended up joining, like FM Future Business Leaders of America.
Oh, that's what my daughter's on.
Yeah,
Yep.
and junior achievement. And now, as an adult, I started to become a judge on the
Wow.
FBLA. And it was so amazing to see how encouraged, because also at my school, it was very small percentage, maybe it was 1%, that were even talked
Mm-hmm.
to go to college.
Yeah.
It just wasn't on our radar. I was also like that. You're going to get married, have children, and maybe work part-time. And that has definitely not been my path.
Yep. Yep. So you broke the rules, which is
Yeah,
awesome,
I did
right?
break the
Yep.
rules in a good way, right? Because it
Yep.
just didn't feel right. So I love that you're that role model, because there wasn't a role model. I didn't know anybody who had gone into business. And so my career was very challenging,
Mm.
not having somebody up until way into it, 20 years into it.
Yeah.
And so it's nice that you're able to give that voice for somebody to know that there is somebody already ahead of them.
Yep. Yeah. So I think it's always, most times when I talk to all of these kids in middle or high school, I feel like that's the connection a lot of them are missing. The opportunity is there and they just don't realize, or again, it's that imposter syndrome. Am I even good enough? Can I even have a conversation? Can I go talk to somebody? Can I even start that? I think is where
Mm-hmm.
most girls just get stuck
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
we
and
just
it,
get
it
hung
is
up.
that crucial age for all of us, all the listeners, all the girls that are out there now. And middle school is so powerful. By the
Mhm.
time you get to high school, you might
Yeah.
already be distracted with some of the stuff that's really not going to serve you when you get older, right? Nobody's encouraging you, or
Hmm.
maybe parents are just struggling, maybe not from a bad upbringing, but it's
Hmm.
just too different than what they're used to.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, every kid is different, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
environment, it's the parents, it's just so many factors, right? And friends, absolutely. Friends is so critical in the middle and high school phase, right? That makes all the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the saying goes, you become who you hang out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is so important because if you don't have the right company, then it's just miss a lot of things at that crucial age.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the listeners have all been through this, like what we're talking about, and their life experiences. And then at some point, they start expanding more into owning their own, being authentic, looking at some of their spiritual gifts. How did you become curious to go learn about yoga and meditation and Reiki and becoming a coach? How has that all evolved from you wanting to know it all, but
Yep.
really coming from that tech environment now into this other arena?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Because again, like I say, I just always feel like I don't have enough time to still learn so much. But I think for me, it really started when the kids were much younger, right?
Mhm.
And my spouse he's also in the tech world. So he had a very demanding job, right? So he used to travel quite a lot. And I had two young girls. I had to just shuttle them around, right? With all these classes, with managing a full-time job and manage home, trying to do all of this. And I felt like life was going so fast. Like I would just not know between weekdays to weekends and everything was a blur. And
Mhm.
it was also getting super stressful, to be honest, right? Just
Mhm.
juggling and just shifting out from work to kids to back. It was a lot. And so I just felt like I had to find a tool to really find that calm, or can I even figure that out? Because I had seen all of this social media posts about, oh my gosh, when you meditate, you have to just sit there and for hours, or you have to sit there for like at least 30 minutes. And I was like, I don't know if I can find the time to do all of this.
Mhm.
But I knew that I had a desire to find a tool to help me. So that's how the journey began. And I was always big into just some form of movement, of physical fitness. I used to try out gyms. I tried Pilates for a while. And actually, one of my friends said, "Hey, have you ever tried yoga? You should come check this out." And I said, okay. And to be honest, again, poster syndrome kicked in where I said,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all those poses that I see in social media, but I will come with you. I'll give it a shot. And honestly, that's how it started. I went to a yoga class. And of course, the first class, I was like, oh my gosh, I would look around me and I was just almost so embarrassed that I wouldn't even want to turn around because I was just not able to stand in those poses. And I would
Mm-hmm.
look at everybody like pros and they were so good at it. And maybe that was also a good thing because it challenged me. I said, wow, when so many folks who are also much older than me can do it so well, what's stopping me? And I had a choice, right? So I said,
Yes.
okay, you know what? I'm going to choose this. So that's how I basically came back. And I don't know, in a couple of weeks, this almost felt like a fun challenge from a physical perspective because
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to get better at these poses. But I think a few weeks in, I actually went and attended a breathwork class, like a pranayama class.
Mm-hmm.
And so just for folks who don't know, pranayama is a Sanskrit word, right? And prana means life force, which is breath. And yama is how you regulate that breath. So that's really pranayama, which again, people also call it breathwork, which is really what it is. And I attended one of those classes. Honestly, I don't know. It may sound cliche, but there was just something in that class that really made me feel like, wow, I can find some calm. I can actually just find peace. Trust me, there were millions of thoughts running around, right? It's not like I was
Yes.
just sitting there, like completely zoned out in this perfect enlightened state. No, that wasn't the truth. But in just closing my eyes and in just following through that guided breath, there was something. There was just something that got me hooked to it.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's how the journey began. And I started going to these classes for a couple of years. And then through the process, I told my husband one day, I said, I'm going to sign up for the certification class. But it's going to take quite some time. I have to be off one weekday evening and then all of Saturday. And then, of course, I'm supposed to do homework and all of it as well. I said, it's going to be a commitment, but I really want to do this. And he said, you should totally go for it. And he was really supportive because, again, my girls were, oh boy, I think they were, yeah, in middle school, right? So they were definitely younger. And somebody had to manage them. And luckily, I had that support. And I actually went through that certification just to be true. It wasn't really for teaching, but it was
Mm-hmm.
more about learning and what I was doing. And that's how that journey began. And at the end of certification, we had to teach a few free community classes. So I just reached out to a few friends. I said, hey, do you want to come and attend? I'm just doing this free class. And they came to the class. And after the class, a couple of them came and told me, hey, I mean, if you're going to start teaching, I would love to just have you put us on a list. And then I thought to myself, wow, I never really thought about this. And I said, okay, maybe I should give it a shot. Honestly, that's how it started. I just started teaching, I like two or three, I think, just friends. And then it was word of mouth. I rented a space, and there was at a point in time, there was what, 50. I had like teenage class, I had a seniors, I had adults, and it was quite a lot because I did not expect that. And again, the kids were growing up, and I wanted to spend more time with them. And through their middle school and high school, I did not want to lose that part of the journey, right, at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and also full time. So you know how those hours add up so
Yes.
quickly. And anyhow, and I think maybe that's when COVID happened and things completely changed. And I just went to online, just Zoom teaching. Yeah, so that was a lot more manageable.
What was really fascinating about what you just shared too is that when you went into the certification, it was to get that deeper knowledge. And I know for myself, and I'm sure the listeners who have different types of certifications, it starts really clarifying the why behind
Exactly.
why we're doing this pose or why we do certain things in the order and how it brings the calm. And the breathing is so powerful. I've heard something recently from one of my recent guests too, who talked about the breathing and how we breathe so shallow.
Yeah.
And then we have the resistance, right? I
Mm-hmm.
know my energy worker that I work with slash coach, she was trying to get me to do the breathing, right? The big breathing exercise. I had so much resistance. And this guest was telling me, which I found fascinating, is that resistance comes in because the deep breaths release trauma.
Yep.
And so we know our body knows that's going to happen and it tries to protect you from that. And you're shaking your head. So yeah, you've
It is.
learned.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating. It
It
is, right?
it
Because
is
like I
so
said,
fascinating.
because for me, again, it was just that stress and how do you manage that?
Mhm.
And even that, just with breathing and that breath work and eventually, yes, I could find more time to do it. But to be honest, when I started, even 5 minutes, even when I was probably in the car dropping them off or I was waiting outside for them to finish class, I would just take those 10 minutes, right? Just
Mhm.
breathing exercise. I really instantly felt that I was in a much calmer state. And we all know as moms, it's not easy with children. We lose emotions. Something triggers us so quickly. Of course,
Mhm.
now with experience, I can say those were silly things. But at that moment, it wasn't, right? So the emotions would trigger and I would probably yell or I would say something where,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't even know if that was the right thing now. That's how the emotions were. So for me, I felt even just spending those 10 minutes on breath work really
Mhm.
just helped release that stress. Consciously, unconsciously, I just felt like I was in a much better place to handle a
Mhm.
lot of things that life just threw a
Yeah.
curveball.
Life is going faster and faster, and our body, we're not created, our nervous system, they're just so deregulated these days. And
Exactly.
especially as women, we're the
Hmm.
ones coordinating the whole household for the most part today, especially our generations. And we're expected to do everything. And
Yeah.
taking that time out, even when it was 10 minutes,
Hmm.
was really you making that choice again
Yeah.
to take care of yourself and that you had needs
Yep.
and that you were going to take care of them. So that's very empowering
Yeah.
for other women to hear. Like it can start small.
Exactly. Yeah, I strongly believe in even having smaller but sustainable habits, right? Because end of the
Hmm.
day, you don't want to set these big lofty goals, right? Or you go on these fad diets like most people do, and then like in 3 months you're back to square one
Hmm.
because you just can't keep this sustainable, right?
Hmm.
And to me, then there's no point in doing something because when you do something, you would rather break that down and just do one thing and just start there. And then you can
Hmm.
always add additional things. But if you just start with this huge, big, lofty goal, I'm afraid you will lose confidence and you will not stay on track. So
Yeah.
to me, I strongly believe in, yes, breaking it down.
Yeah. And when it's really, really hurts us when we start a lofty goal and then something happens in your schedule, you miss
Hmm.
one, then you miss two. Next thing you know, you've missed this. And then we start to feel really even worse about the
Exactly.
circumstances.
Yep. It's a
And
vicious cycle, right? Because you get stuck.
yes, yes. And one of the things that you're constantly sharing, Shah, is that I have a choice. I have a choice. I have a choice. And every day we can start to have a different choice.
Yep.
And we don't have to tackle everything all at once. Small steps.
Yes.
The turtle still wins over the hare, right? From the small
Exactly.
steps, progress versus the perfection, too. That's built into the woman's DNA. We have to be perfect.
Trust me, I've learned that through my parenting and my career journey, right? Because now when I
Hmm.
think back, I'm like, it's so important to embrace those imperfections because you just can't define success as being perfect and doing things perfectly because
Hmm.
then you're never going to get there. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big mistake most of us as women, just because either we're just trained that way, or for me, maybe it was a cultural thing, whatever that was, but it was almost always saying, oh my gosh, if you don't do this, or if you don't raise the perfect kids, oh my God, you failed as a mom. You gave it your best shot. You gave them the best opportunities. You gave them everything you had, but it's also on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like most women, we just go into this guilt trip. We fall into the space, right? Just because of these expectations on us. And I feel like, again, it's that spiral, right? Because you get stuck in this and then imposter syndrome, everything just keeps adding. It's
Mm-hmm.
just this, oh my gosh, a crazy compounding effect and this spiral.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so important about like the training that you're pursuing to continually help not only yourself, because we always start with ourselves,
Yep.
and others is to be able to feel the need. At least I feel now at this point in my life, I'm 58, is that it's not just a responsibility. I want to reach back and help others feel their own worth
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
really pick each other up. I fall down too, and I have my friends who will also help me or the support. I have a coach and I have other people on my journey as well for support. I think we're meant to be in community.
yes. Oh, absolutely. If, for one, actually, before I get to that answer, I want to say you don't even look like 58, by the way.
Oh,
But,
thank you.
but yeah, on the community question, I have to say the research, if you look at the happiest countries in the world, the number one reason is community living because
Mhm,
they all live in communities. They have people around them. They have people they can trust. They have people they can confide in. And I feel, again, as the families are getting a more nuclear, we're losing that whole generational group or like a family, extended family living.
mhm,
I just feel we're losing a lot of those things, which just disconnects us more from that community feeling. And
mhm,
because one of the things I'm just learning as part of my IIN health coach training is the concept of primary foods. And what that really talks about is primary foods are really what's off your plate. So, what that really means is they talk about four categories. And the first category is relationships.
mm,
Second is career, because you need some form of financial independence, of course, to support you.
mhm,
And then the third one is movement. So some form of a physical fitness that you
mhm,
have. And then the last, but not the least, is spirituality. So they talk about those four aspects as primary foods, which is off your plate. So what nourishes your soul? And so to your point about community or relationships, I was
mhm,
just able to suddenly, my mind just went there because I was able to just draw those parallels because that's how important relationship
mhm.
is.
It is the most, and it's so important. It's one of the reasons I started the podcast in 2021 was that I was working in tech and I felt like I was living these parallel
Mm-hmm.
lives. And then 9/11 happened,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd been flying for business the day before. And I think my son was like right there, like sixth grade, right? So he's right that at the end of middle school, going
Yep.
into or elementary school, going into middle school. And it just wiped me out. I thought that could have been me on a plane, but that wasn't my divine purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it really had me start looking at things of what you've talked about. Like you have a choice. You have a choice to go do this. And that's when I began my Reiki experience. In fact, that's the first episode on the podcast. If people are more interested in that, and why I've started my own community too with the
Yep.
podcast, as well as I have a membership. And
Yep.
so it's really more about supporting each other
Mm-hmm.
with this. And you've mentioned as well as who are the five people that you're
Mm-hmm.
spending the time with, that we need something for us as women. We
Mm-hmm.
need something that really is just ours. Motherhood is amazing if people have it, or maybe it's with pets or with your parents, but there's something about us owning something that's just for our own being, our mental health, our physical
Yes.
health that belongs to us.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like women today have to really find time to prioritize self-care. Nobody's going to do it
Mhm.
for you but you.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely agree with
Yes,
that.
it's
This
so
whole year has
critical.
been about a health journey,
Hmm.
and this season has really incorporated that into the Light Up Your Worth podcast because it really is. We have a tendency also to, we start looking at like you're Reiki trained as well, and the
Hmm.
yoga and the meditation. And I think we're getting better about doing some of that, but
Yep.
also bringing in the movement and what's
Yes.
on our plate
Hmm.
is
Everything.
really like we really have to think more about it than we did even 10, 15 years ago because
Yep.
of how our food supply is even.
Mm,
And it seems like it's this more holistic community that
yes.
seems to understand that more. I feel I could be wrong there. I haven't studied it in great detail, but
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the whole concept even of holistic wellness, right? And
mhm,
even just with my training, with this whole integrative nutrition, that's really what this is, right? How do you think about all of this together? It's not a singular thing. It's not just what you eat, because if you have a toxic relationship or if you have a toxic job or a manager, that's not going to help you. You can
mhm,
eat all the greens, you can eat all the organic food in the world, but sorry, your body is just not going to be at its optimal capacity
mhm.
because there are other things that are not nourishing your soul.
Yes. Yes, I'm a testimonial to that. I haven't shared it quite yet, but it's from having some of that toxicity
Yep.
where I was focusing on some things, but the toxicity of relationships is
Hmm.
so powerful, whether it's at home or at work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just feel now, I think more women just being aware, actually coming out and speaking about a lot of these things that have happened behind the covers, right? But I think it's so important for women to prioritize self-care, think about themselves, find tools, find that community, find that time for yourself.
Hmm.
Because, like they say, when you get on an airplane, first put on your oxygen mask because otherwise you're not going to be able to help anybody.
No, and it's not that difficult to get depleted.
Oh, yeah.
What I have found in this decade is though I found my worth after struggling for decades, is that still the growth that's required in the health. Like
Mm,
I've been doing a lot of self-care for a couple decades, but it was a whole different level of self-care
yeah.
with the whole package, all aspects
Mm,
and trying to fit all of that in. And it's such a powerful place for
yeah.
all of us because it does. Your body can only hold that stress for so many decades, ladies. And then
Exactly.
at some point, it's going to show up with disease.
Hmm.
And you want to get it before you are doing that and it takes you down.
Oh,
Having
yeah.
experienced that this last year, it's so important. So you have such a powerful message about wellness. And I love the four things that you put on your plate. That is a
Yes.
great tip for people.
Yes. Yeah. That was an interesting concept that I just learned about during this health coach training, which I hadn't quite heard before. And so I think it's just super important for folks to realize that there's primary foods, which are off the plate, and there's secondary foods is what they call as on the plate. So I think it's important to know the distinction and to know that it all comes together. And there's
Mhm.
not just one linear way to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, so agree. So agree. This has been so great. Now, I want to move us into the questions that I'd like to ask all my guests. I'm a big believer in music and how it has the ability to shift our mood, lift us up on those more challenging days. And I would love to know what is a song that you put on to help raise your spirits and uplift you?
Sure. Oh my gosh, the I would say it's almost a family song, but it's Roar by Katy Perry. I just love that song, Roar. I feel it's just the energy of the song. And each time I feel like I'm low or I'm looking for that something to just lift me up, that's
Mhm,
the song I listen to. And I just love the line where she says, I forgot I had a choice.
mhm,
And to me, everything in my life, and even this interview, as we've been talking about a lot of these questions, each time I actually had a choice. I could say no, or I could say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to get into that growth mindset and go figure out something I've never done. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, this song was just, oh my gosh, it was just something that just clicked right away that first time we heard the song. And I know my girls love it too. And yes, I would say that's my song.
Yeah. So if your girls hear it on the radio, hear it, oh, they're downstairs and they hear it in upstairs, they're like, oh.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we love this song. So I know anytime we're like driving, this song just plays.
Yeah, a
So
lot of car
yes.
dancing, I'm sure. Love that. And
Oh, yes.
and the second question I'm always so curious about because you've just had this incredible journey on all these seasons later. If you could go back to your younger self, what
Mhm.
would you tell her about your own worth?
I would just say you are enough and just the way you are. Because I just feel our worth is not defined by what you achieve or how others see you or even any mistakes you've made. Because I feel it's rooted as your values. What do you see yourself worthy of? The love, the respect, and the kindness. So I just feel don't let anybody else tell you your worth because you are unique and you have to just figure out your life and find your own light within.
Hmm. Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And
Thank
so
you.
glad that I've been through so much and that you're just bringing this light to other generations of women and sharing your story. I think it's really important because looking from the outside in, who would know that looking at you? You're just well put together, spoken, and nobody would ever know of where you started to where you are now. And I think as a tendency, sometimes we look at people's reels and we don't know what it took to get here to where you're at. So thank you for sharing that with all of us.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to just share my journey. And I truly hope to inspire girls, women, and just
Hmm.
more in the community because I feel like this imposter syndrome is real. And I just feel that lack of confidence. I still see it in so many pockets. And there is, I think, a lot of work to do. And
Hmm.
especially when I even think about a global reach, there's so much to do.
Yeah, there is. Now, how can the listeners reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can find me on Instagram at instagram.com/Shalini Tyagaraja. So that's a long name. I'm happy to share the link, but it's spelled SHALINITHYAGARAJA. And you can also find me on my website. It's mindspacejourney.org. And you can reach out to me there. You can learn more about just any of the coaching services. And you can also find my podcast. And I would love for more people to tune in and subscribe because we talk about everything wellness. And I would
Hmm.
love for more individuals to be aware of holistic wellness and how they can help their own journeys
Hmm.
before you wait till something not so good happens to you.
Now, what's the name of your podcast?
It's Let's Talk Wellness with
Okay.
Shal.
All right. Yeah, so we'll also include all of contact information. So for all of you who are on the Stairmaster right now or driving, we'll include in the show notes so that you have that. Thank you so much for joining me, Shaw. It's just been such a pleasure to get to know you better and all of the goodness that you are bringing out in the world, shining your light.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I love the work you're doing, and it's awesome that you're bringing such a big community together and just various diverse experiences. I think it's so important for individuals, right, as we all grow in our own journeys, just to learn from each other and find a shoulder to lean on, right? Anytime you need to listen to something or you need to learn from somebody's experience, I think it's just amazing the work you're doing through this podcast. So I appreciate this time.
Yeah, thank you.